This 2011 case resulted in a six-figure settlement after he was sued for using a stun gun on a man during this beating. You can hear it.
Stop resisting! Stop! Put your hands behind your back!
So the other part I want to talk about here on the show, there was a couple of stories that came out this week, and I think it's important that we talk about them. As you know, outside of Minneapolis, Officer Kim Potter was found guilty of manslaughter of Dante Wright, and she is going to end up serving less than 2 years in jail, which many of us obviously view as a travesty of justice. You know, we are so accustomed to the system not working for us. In part, I view a conviction in any jail time as a tiny victory, even though it's really not. And there's a lot of reasons for us to sort of be despondent if we weren't so goddamn angry, if we weren't so furious at the system and the way that it treats us. But the other interesting part of the cop aspect coming out of that particular part of the country is that the three officers who were with Derek Chauvin the day that he murdered George Floyd have also been found guilty of the charges in which they were respectively convicted of. Now, I don't think that they have been sentenced as of yet, and I think that is going to be interesting as well. I mean, because if you stand there and watch someone kill another person, in a way, you're sort of an accessory to that murder, yes? And if it was regular non-police people, it would be no question that they would be looking at lengthy jail sentences. But because they are police, and part of the reason that their defense raised as to why they just stood there looking fucking stupid, why this man was killing George Floyd, is because, hey, they didn't have good training. Didn't have good training, eh? Derek Chauvin actually was a training officer, a field training officer in Minneapolis. And I remember after George Floyd was murdered, and I remember discovering that fact, I was like, oh, so that actually makes a lot of sense. He's absolutely training other Minneapolis police officers that, hey, you don't have to pay attention to the civil rights, the constitutional rights, hell, not even the human rights of Black people. You could just do anything to Black people and everything will be fine. Tunde, if we could take a look, I think that's going to be B1. So this came out this week, guys. And I loathe to give local media props. Loathe to do it. But goddamn, as far as local media goes, I ain't mad at what KARE 11 News did out here. KARE 11 investigates nearly 150 officers on the Minneapolis Police Department with misconduct cases and or who have been sued for excessive force. These people are training officers. These are the ones who actually train new police. And it's a little bit satisfying when you hear the quiet parts being spoken aloud, right? This package that you're about to see is basically going to underpin all the reasons that police reform is impossible. You cannot reform a body like this. And it's not specific or peculiar to the Minneapolis Police Department. This is every police department in cities big and small in this country. This is every sheriff's department. This is every state police department. This is all of it. It is the entire system of American policing, well, global policing, but for the purposes of this conversation, American policing. So listen, y'all, this is like 3 minutes and some change. And the reason why I even included this much of this package is because the shit was pretty fucking good. I'm not going to even hold you. Shout out to KARE 11 News. And please let the reporting that KARE 11 has done here, I'm not saying it's infallible, but it's pretty good relative to the other types of local media reporting that we see. But let this be a lesson to all local media, especially, well, television, print, radio, whomever, whatever the medium, that if you investigate your local police department, there are a lot of stories there, okay? A lot of stories. And if you find, as journalists and reporters and media outlets and news organizations, that, hey, there's a lot of bad, police department in our town is doing a lot of bad things. And if there is any sort of reluctance on your part as a journalist or a news director as to why you would not pursue these stories to the hilt, numerous stories, ask yourself, what role are you playing in upholding propaganda, in upholding the police state? But anyway, watch this shit, y'all. Yes, Alicia, you pay attention to this shit. I know you in Minneapolis. This is from KARE 11 News, and this is an investigative piece that they did that was released this week. Let's check it out.
How long y'all gotta hold him down?
Just days before the murder of George Floyd, Derek Chauvin served as Alexander King's field training officer, an FTO, a teacher and mentor for rookies.
They have to be the gold standard of the department.
Chauvin was one of MPD's most prolific FTOs, despite a history that records show included beating and kneeling on a 14-year-old boy. We wondered how many other field training officers also have a history of discipline or misconduct. Our investigation found example after example.
Oh my, what? Oh, why'd you touch me?
Like William Gregory, seen in a cell phone video allegedly sucker punching a teen. A frequent FTO, he trained new recruits despite 4 prior suspensions. Sherry Appledorn, an FTO whose history includes 35 complaints, 3 disciplinary actions, and named in 5 lawsuits that cost taxpayers nearly $400,000.
Bro. So if I get out of the car, you're gonna beat me up? I'll beat the shit out of you.
Dustin Schwarzy was first accused of excessive force when he worked for Richfield. This 2011 case resulted in a 6-figure settlement after he was sued for using a stun gun on a man during this beating. You can hear it.
Stop resisting! Stop! Put your hands behind your back!
The victim wasn't being accused of a crime. He said he was confused after getting conflicting orders from officers. In 2016, as a Minneapolis officer, Schwarzy was involved in the death of Jamar Clark. He wasn't criminally charged, but it was another $200,000 lawsuit payout. Still, he became an FTO. Then, in 2020, Schwarzy appeared to smile after firing a flashbang grenade into a car while executing a warrant. According to a lawsuit, the driver, who wasn't a suspect, suffered serious burns. Again, taxpayers paid to the tune of $170,000.
They're just passing those bad habits or those very dangerous viewpoints onto another officer. And then it becomes kind of this, vicious cycle.
We asked Randy Shrewsbury, a former cop who now heads the nonprofit Institute for Criminal Justice Training Reform, to review our findings. How important is the field training officer when it comes to police culture?
Relating to culture, I think it's absolutely critical.
So what kind of culture is MPD passing along? KARE 11 obtained data on field training officers from 2016 through 2021. Of the more than 400 MPD cops who served as field trainers during that time, we found that 1 in 3 of them had been disciplined or had been sued for misconduct, lawsuits resulting in upwards of $34 million in payouts.
In my view, that would be a disqualification, especially if it's related to misconduct and especially if it's related to excessive use of force.
Perhaps the most egregious, the case of Peter Brazo. Watch as Brazo and his partner Alexander Brown arrest a man for causing trouble at a downtown bar. While he's already handcuffed on the ground, records show Brown taunts the man, leading him to kick at officers. Brazo responds with 4 punches to the head. Brown lands another. In the aftermath, you can see a pool of blood on the sidewalk. Both would be relieved of duty. Months later, the police conduct review panel found they used excessive force. But then, the day after that finding, Brazo was put back on patrol and quickly named a field training officer. Later, when then-Chief Madera Arredondo fired him for intentionally inflicting unreasonable physical force, an arbitrator overturned it, citing the fact that Brazo was an FTO.
So never mind the fact that this person had caused individual terrorism and assaults and cost the city and taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. Oh, he's a field training officer, so it gotta be a good guy, right? Defunding the police, unfortunately, is not going to be enough. And the amount of resistance that activists and really our community has faced. Well, for one, we have to make sure that everybody, especially Black people, let me be fucking clear. Because listen, Baltimore can say the same thing as DC. When the when violent crime spikes in the city, in both of these cities, in which I live in proximity to, it's always, we need more police, we need more police, but it be Black people on TV. And let me not say, and I'm not blaming the Black people on TV that get on TV and say, hey, we need more police. They're just responding to what the fuck that they know, to the situation that's been presented to them. Because that is the way that crime has always been presented to all of us. The only solution for crime is policing and jails, right? Treatment, especially when it comes to drugs, is a relatively new phenomenon. That's a more of a recent thing. That's a past, maybe 20, 25 years sort of alternative diversion to prison. But there's no hesitancy in our elected officials, Democrats and Republicans, Black and white, this entire system in America. It is all for us being incarcerated and will literally wag its finger to other countries around the world about their human rights records. And that's why America can never be believed when it talks about we have to go in to fight for Ukrainian sovereignty, for defending democracy. Bitch, please. You don't even defend democracy. Yeah. You don't even acknowledge the sovereignty of indigenous nations for which the United States government has active treaties with that it is actively breaking. So we have to condition and program our own people to deprogram themselves from the bullshit. Okay, because as long as it's one or two people out there advocating for more police, the elected officials, the political class, the police class are always going to point and say the community is asking for these police. This is what the community wants. So in addition to us fighting against the system of policing and trying to defund it and abolish it altogether, we have to defund and abolish our people's thinking when it comes to what police do, the role that they play in our communities. And let's be clear, police do not prevent violent crime. They do not stop violent crime. The main thing that the police 30 and 40 years ago were tasked with doing, the so-called war on drugs, them niggas was the ones all behind the war on drugs. Not only was the police selling drugs, the police was importing drugs. Like again, a farcical war for which the only enemy was Black and brown people, and to make sure that those Black and brown people were eliminated and removed from society by putting them away in jail, right? So once we understand and we convince our own communities that, hey, the police, in fact, do not keep us safe, that increasing police funding and increasing police presences in our communities actually hasten the violence, they accelerate it, they make it worse, they are not a solution. We need to divert these funds to other areas. Then I think perhaps we will be able to see some sort of marked change in our society. But the problem is, that's not the point, right? The point is not to uplift people's lives. The point is not to make people's lives better. It is to continue to enrich the plutocrats and the people who sit on top. And incarceration is big business in this country, as is policing, big business. And we have to keep pointing out that very glaring truth, to the point where people like Joe Biden and your governor and your mayor wherever you live, it's going to be impossible to deny that. And actually, I think that that is probably going to be like the next strategy that we need to use. We need to start confronting these elected officials and these police representatives. Like, show me the data. Like, where's the proof? Yeah, like, for example, in the district, last summer, Muriel Bowser authorized unlimited overtime for police. So 8 months later, there's still a lot of violence, and people in the city are screaming at the mayor that the mayor's not doing nothing. The mayor's not doing nothing. No, but it's just the police who is not doing nothing. The police got this influx of all this money, unlimited overtime, and did the violent crime go down? No. Why? Because the police are not the solution to violent crime. Universal basic income, guaranteed housing, food security, ample access to quality education. You know what I'm saying? Like there's other ways. There's lots of other ways, and other ways that have not even been fully explored. But at the end of the day, they're not going to be explored unless we demand it. And God damn it. And do you know what I really hate to admit? I really don't want to admit this, but it's the truth. Some of us are going to have to run for office. And I don't know. Is it going to be Pookie Wood? Who's going to run for office? Courtney? Who's running for office out here? Alicia? Shanette? Who's running for office? God damn it. Because I don't want it to be me. I do not want it to be me. Craig, we could talk about housing, bro. Let me tell you something. I saw a story last night on NBC News and they're talking about the rental crisis. And bitch, see, some of these topics, they get me so angry. I have to disconnect. I think I totally have, what are they, is it a dissociative order? Yes, I will dissociate myself in a second, bitch. I will teleport elsewhere in a minute. But no, Craig Barter, they were talking about the rental crisis, bitch, and how there's a lack of inventory. I think there's actually not a lack of inventory. I think it's a lack of people being able to afford what the housing market is demanding upon us right now. I mean, my God, this shit about to look like feudalism in a second. It's terrible. It is terrible. But I do not want to run for office. But I'm not going to say I don't see. I mean, I totally see how outside organizing and putting pressure on these institutions can absolutely yield change. But the other part of that, I do agree, has to be made from the inside. I'm sorry. Yes, Luke Kane, you are right. Shirley, you are right. And if we need any sort of, I guess, roadmap, we need not look further than what the conservatives are doing right now. I mean, they are putting motherfuckers on the school boards left and right. They're putting niggas on the board of estimates left and right. They're putting people on the community planning boards left and right. And I think we need to be doing that shit because this is how, redlining happened. This is how a lot of things happen because we were not involved. And I want this state to go away. I really do, but I don't see it falling in my lifetime. So if it does not fall in my lifetime, what are my obligations to try to get inside and work inside the belly of the beast? See, goddammit, we keep talking to all and listening to all these revolutionaries. These niggas is making me reconsider all my positions. I was ready to flee immediately to Panama 2 weeks ago until Lafini and Dr. CBS came on here and told us that they was going down with the ship and listed their reasons why. And I said, God damn it. Shit. But getting further back about how we cannot reform this system. So we just took a look at Minneapolis, which again, let me shout out to Care 11 News. I justifiably shit on a lot of local news agencies for their very myopic and fucking propaganda slanted reporting. That was not a propaganda slanted piece. And I think more news outlets need to show that sort of courage because the only reason why news outlets, in my opinion, for a lot of reasons, but they don't do these in-depth analyses unprompted, right? of all the ways that their local police department operates badly and engages in misconduct and constantly violating people's rights is because at the end of the day, the media is afraid of the police. You know what I'm saying? Like, they are afraid of the cops. They don't want to lose access to police, whatever the fuck. I don't know. It doesn't sound like white people shit. But anyway, it's not exclusive with white people shit because there's a lot of Black journalists who do that shit too. Let's pop up, if we could today, let's look at B2. So just to give you another more reason as to why the system needs to be demolished, and especially the system of policing, because in America, security is prioritized over everything else. Even in periods of relatively low levels of crime, even through periods of so-called peace, you know, when the country is not at war, we still experience record high levels of police spending. And Mayor Eric Adams, I feel like New York is going to be a fascinating place to just be watching during the Adams administration, because we're going to see how why are my dogs barking? Jesus. How terrible. Oh my God, now the dogs are going crazy. Jesus Christ. I'm so sorry. Help me, Jesus. Help me, Jesus. I don't know. Is it loud? Can you hear the dogs coming through pretty loudly? Alrighty. I feel like we need to have a little commercial break diversion. Maybe we should make some little promos that we can play when my dogs are going ape shit. But Eric Adams, he has recently submitted his budget, right? His first budget as mayor. And what Eric Adams has proposed is that he would cut north of $300 million from New York City public schools. Let me repeat that. Right after a pandemic, right after students have endured lockdowns and isolations and virtual learning, and obviously the high levels of grief that came with surviving a pandemic, Adams says that he wants to cut school budgets by $370 something million. However, throughout his proposed $98 billion budget that he submitted, which I think the New York Times piece is going to be B3 there today, Adams proposed $98 billion budget, but no cuts to New York City Police Department. No cuts to NYPD. No cuts to the Gestapo that patrol the cities of New York City. Excuse me, I don't even know if they actually patrol the city. Don't they just post up in the subways and just stand around and try to wait for people to try to hop the turnstile? I mean, let's be clear. NYPD is not impressive out here in any way, shape, or form. You guys are nice. And you understand, like, if Adams was the best, and I know that he was not the best, right? But if that's who people showed up for, thank you, Kev Wolf. Thank you, Kev Z. If that's who people showed up for Eric Adams, man, we got a long way to go, baby. A long way to go. Because a Black man who runs as a Democrat, who himself is former police, who is determined to uphold the police state and the police ethos and not to diminish it at all, but to again remain in the footsteps of a lot of his predecessors, I would imagine. And this is really across the board. Anytime that something needs to be cut, America doesn't hesitate to defund education. America does not hesitate to defund public health. America does not hesitate to defund a lot of shit. But defunding the police is, strangely, a very controversial position, of which even representatives of our community, and as much as I hate to say it, James Clyburn, I guess, represents our community. And when you have someone with, I'm certain, with the knowledge of health disparities, of economic disparities between Black and white, certainly I'm sure in his state of South Carolina, James Clyburn knows all this shit. And he's not even open to considering a redistribution of the money that police get. And again, this is national, and this is local, and this is state, and this is a lot of things. So, guys, wait. I know it's 6 o'clock. Hold on. The last thing I wanted to touch on, hold on. Because y'all need to see this. Because this is important. It's going to be B4 Tune Day. And I was kind of pissed that the Washington Post put this behind a paywall. Because when I tried to click on it, it denied me. But I did read the article. I was able to break through the paywall and get to the article. So it says, after decades of lobbying, supporters say that they have the votes in the House to pass a reparations bill. Okay, so that headline's a little misleading because well, when I hear reparations bill, I'm thinking the bill that's gonna get me reparations, right? No. This is the bill to even entertain whether or not you niggas are worthy of reparations, right? And whether or not the reparations is even viable, which is bullshit because we all know that it is. Alicia, thank you so much for your super chat, dearest. We certainly appreciate that. For the doggies, you guys are hilarious. Our dogs be fucking up my broadcast with regularity. But this is the first time in history that this bill has advanced out of the committee. Okay, and HB 40 is distinctly named, and it's intentionally named for 40 because obviously after emancipation, former enslaved Black people were promised 40 acres and a mule that was supposed to have been taken from the Confederates and given to the Black folks. And then after Lincoln was assassinated, they said, nope, never mind, we ain't doing that shit. Y'all take all this racism, y'all take these cross burnings, y'all take these lynchings, that's all you get. We not reparating for shit because we don't owe you niggas anything, which is bullshit. But anyway, so HB 40 is going to make it out of committee. Now, what this bill allegedly does is going to examine and sort of, I assume, put together what reparations would look like. And Sheila Jackson Lee, she said when, Sheila Jackson Lee, after John Conyers resigned from Congress, she took over the mantle of reintroducing this bill into different sessions of Congress. And Sheila Jackson Lee said that they had to go, individual by individual, representative by representative, and explain to them that them supporting this bill does not mean that a check is coming in the mail. And that, to me, is sort of undercutting the whole thing. Now, I agree that we need to analyze it to the extent of we need to figure out how much everybody's getting. But let's be clear, at the end of this process, everybody, when I say everybody, I mean everybody Black. Everybody Black is getting something. And I'm not gonna do the ADOS and argue with anybody about who deserves what. Because if you think that Caribbean people or even other African people from the continent did not endure the horrors of colonialism for generations upon generations, like, nigga, if you happen to be here when the reparations go out, I say you get a reparations, whatever that is. And I hope it is in the form of money, because I don't want stolen land. You feel me? Like, this land, this country is not America's to give to anyone else's, right? This is indigenous land. Like, this land has owners that are not white and not African, right? So run me my fucking check, Slim. Run me my check. And this reparations consideration bill has been put to every Congress for the past 30 years. And I wonder, is it going to take 30 years or 300 years before the descendants of slavery are able to see something in return, in reparation for the horrors and the continued discrimination and violence and racial injustice that we have continued to face? So I find it kind of interesting that as Joe Biden is trying to support Ukraine's sovereignty, we get these little kernels of so-called progressivism, right? Like, oh, Joe Biden has announced the black woman that he intends to put on the Supreme Court, who will still be in the voting minority, who will not be able to comprise enough of a voting bloc to serve as a check to the conservative justices when they rule on cases that will negatively impact black people, right? It's going to be nice that she's going to be up there. I'm sure she's going to look lovely and beautiful in her robe. But that's about all she's going to be. She's going to be, unfortunately, I hate to even reduce this like this, but she is going to be a token. That's it. Not going to have no real power to change our material condition. And Joe Biden, with his power and his authority that he has right now, could do a number of things via executive order to change our material condition. By the way, he could, via executive order, order the study of reparations to be done absent a House vote or any sort of congressional vote. Like, he could order that via executive order right now. But he won't, because why? Joe Biden hates black people, and don't you ever forget it.